So we're here with
Will.
So Will, is this your first time at a Kaleidoscope?
No, I think I've been here 4 or 5 years now. And I've enjoyed every one.
So what do you come for Fest for? Do you do for rituals, workshops, vacation?
Vacation, spiritual, I love the energy that KG has, and some of the workshops. And to meet some friends I don't get to see very often.
Who am I speaking to?
My name is Jolene, and my craft name is Rising Phoenix.
Okay. And where are you from?
I am from Canada, but mostly in Mont Tremblant. That's not where I grew up, but that's where I work now.
Is this your first time at a Kaleidoscope?
It is. It's my first, Kaleidoscope Fest, but I've been to one other fest before that, and I don't want to miss any other since my first time.
What kind of things have you enjoyed? Have you gone to rituals or workshops?
I have gone to a few workshops, love them. It's given me other perspectives. Also, it's since I'm a globalist, so it gives me the opportunity of seeing another angle of what I already know. So that for me is important. And for the rituals, I've been to a few, wonderful, completely different from my philosophy, but still love them and would want to participate in each one that I can have a chance to.
What is your spiritual path?
I like to say that I am the sum of my experience. I have a lot of affinity with paganism, but I'm not limited to paganism.
So who do I have the pleasure of speaking to today?
Okay, my name is Ethna.
And where do you hail from?
I hail from the Ottawa region.
Is this your first time at Kaleidoscope?
No. Kaleidoscope is 19 years old this year, and I believe I've been to 16 of the 19 Kaleidoscopes.
So what do you come to Fest for? Is it mostly the rituals, workshops, vacation, vending?
It's the sense of peace. I find that I attend a ritual or two, I attend a workshop or two. This is my first year ever to vend. It's the people and it's the sense of freedom and just being able to relax and be.
What's your spiritual path?
I would say Wiccan-esque. It's I'm a member of an eclectic tradition. The roots obviously are in Wicca, since many of the traditions are, and it's very Wiccan-like.
So who do I have the pleasure of speaking to today?
Shane Holtquist.
And where do you hail from?
Ottawa.
Is this your first time at Kaleidoscope?
Definitely not. It's probably my 8th year at Kaleidoscope, minus the 1 year that we didn't have the festival.
So what do you come to Kaleidoscope for? Is it rituals, workshops, vacation?
It's to meet a lot of the people that I don't get to see all the time. People from Toronto, Montreal, Hamilton, all over the country in North America actually. It's a chance to catch up with friends and have a good time. Just sit around, chat, and catch up.
And what spiritual path do you follow?
I am a Satru, just following the gods of Northern Europe.
So who do I have the pleasure of speaking to today?
Jeremy.
And where do you hail from?
Ottawa.
Is this your first time at Kaleidoscope?
No. I haven't been keeping track a number of years.
Yeah. So what do you come to Fest for? Is it rituals, workshops, vacation?
All of the above.
Above?
Meeting friends. For me, primarily meeting friends and getting together, drumming and dancing.
What spiritual path do you follow?
Wicca.
I'd be very pleased if you could do some drumming for us for a few minutes.
Sure.
Thank you very much.
Okay, well, it's amazing that it's 20 years ago that Minifest started. Yeah, I guess we called it Minifest to start with. And it started with maybe about 40 people. And we had little workshops sitting out there in the grass somewhere, and our little makeshift outhouse. One of the things I really liked about Minifest, and now like about Microfest, is people are out there camping in the bugs and the rain or whatever's going on, and dealing with the outhouse and water from the hose, and I'm here in my house, perfectly comfortable. It's I could just wander out and join the fest, or then come back. But anyway, that was one good thing about being the hostess. The bad thing about being the hostess was I was the one everybody came to for everything. The cows are loose. We need a screwdriver. The water isn't working. That was every hour or so. Water isn't working. So that got to be kind of a... But anyway, how it all started, which is the point of this. Mike Coven, the Silver Wheel, we had been inviting a few people from Ottawa that I'd met out for some of our Sabbats. And some of them had said, hey, you've got this piece of land, and Wiccanfest is so far to drive to. This would be really neat. Why don't we have a little festival here? And I think the people who suggested this were sort of the first instigators of it. There was Dave and Trish Slater, David Friend, Dana, don't know the last name, and somebody else who I've been trying to think of his first name even. But anyway, a little group of people who were active in Ottawa at that time, and they suggested it, and so we started it, and it was David Friend who was the Willow, who was the coordinator or manager or whatever for the first couple of years. And then after a couple of years, Pam Fletcher took over and ran things. And each year we had more and more people, you know, 40, 60, 100, 150, 200. And then the last year, which is just, I can't even imagine how it could have been, but we had on our registration lists 300 people, which, you know, I got 17 acres. Most of it's rock and swamp, and not all of it's flat. In fact, very little of it's flat, and it was just difficult to accommodate people for camping spots. And we saw up at the road, there's no parking except on the road, and that's not really ideal. So now I don't remember. Somebody who keeps track of things better will have to say how many years it was here. 4 years, 5 years? And then we moved it to Bob's Land. I said, I just can't do it anymore. I can't have it here. So I found a place not far from here. Somebody I knew had just bought this really pretty little piece of land along the river. It was sort of shaped like a comet. There was this nice round area for a fire pit and for the main ritual and the bardic and everything. And then there was this long narrow piece coming out behind it which went along the river. And it was really quite beautiful, but again, it was not really ideal, and there wasn't a proper road in. By the time the last people were leaving, the exit was just so torn up, it was very hard on the cars and everything. And there were other reasons. And then Pam, I believe, was looking for dedicated Kaleidoscope land because it was now Kaleidoscope by this point. And but then she found Whispering Pines, and that is just the ideal place for Kaleidoscope, and it can accommodate as many people as are going to come, so it can continue to grow and be a major festival.
Okay, well, one of the problems with Minifest was there was no place to park, so the cars had to park on the shoulder of the road, and that's okay when you got half a dozen cars, but the last year I think we had 300 people here, which I don't know how many cars that was. A lot of cars lined up the road, and I was afraid that at night they might get vandalized, and the other thing was that you couldn't get out of the laneway safely, that we had the police come and say, hey, you know, don't just come out of the road, you're going to get T-boned. It just got to be totally impossible to deal with the cars. He asked, what kind of cats have you got that we got to watch out for, you know? Are they
tigers,
cougars or something? I just said don't run over them. They'd unload their car and we'd have some wheelbarrows, and people would put their stuff in the wheelbarrows and wheel it a long way down through the garden into the bush and find themselves a camping spot. And the funny thing was that the first year when we had about 40 people, and maybe the next year we had about 60 people, there were lots of complaints. There's no place to camp. It's all rocks and hills and swamp. But the last year when we had 300 people, the strange thing was they all just disappeared into the woods, and I didn't hear any complaints at all. They just found places to camp. I remember one woman who said afterwards she was very pregnant, and she'd ended up in a tent on a hillside, and she had to take great care when she opened the door that she didn't just roll down the hill. One of the reasons that I eventually kicked Minifest off the land here was not only the crowds, but the fact that it was always held at the beginning of August was really, really, really hot, and I don't deal with heat well. So heat plus a million people tromping around was just getting to be a bit much. But it was fun while it lasted here. Anyway, the garage wasn't here before, but the gate was. No escaping cats. It was a whole different set of cats then, but that was always a problem if they were going to escape, because people are always opening the door. Anyway, so people unload, get their stuff in the wheelbarrow, and go down the garden path. Oh, this was the water supply. I've got a hose running from my tap down to the fire pit area. I still have it hooked up, and somewhat better than before, because we still have a little festival here in the fall on the Labor Day weekend. But no 300 people. You know, 40 to 60, fewer than 100 the way Minifest started out, only now we call it Microfest.
I was at the first Microfest when there were 5 of us, remember?
5? Oh yes, and we were in the barn. at
Well,
one
we
point.
talked a lot on the porch back there, actually.
Oh, yeah, we sat on the porch because, if I recall rightly, it was raining.
Yeah. It was very long.
So we just sat on the porch. That was, you know, so it was not, maybe it was the next one we were in the barn, but the barn has been changed completely. Now, uh, an important feature of camping is to have outhouses, of course. And we had something over there, and I can't remember. There was a hole in the ground to start with, and I can't remember what kind of a cover we put over it, but we had something there which was, you know. And then after that, where is it? We built a couple of good outhouses. You can't even see it from here, I guess. There's only one of them left. But it was built for the ages. A really sturdy building with a hole that's about 18 inches deep because this is Lanark County and it's very stony. So it's just a monument to something or other now. And this over here was the original fire pit. Somewhere, I think maybe here, there's the stones from the original fire pit, which you can see is not exactly ideal because it's on a slant. So dancing around the fire was kind of difficult. You had to go uphill and then come downhill and hope you didn't fall in. It was, so that was the first year or two, and then we moved the fire pit over to a nice flat area over here. It's, I haven't uncovered it yet for the summer, but we've got a much better fire pit here. That worked for a few years because there's nice space to dance around. There's room to have the seating around. And this was really a really nice little area here. At night, with the trees all around and the stars right above, it was really nice. A nice little walk through the woods. Wow. Beautiful. Well, this is the grove, which was just the grove before our coven for a long time. So it's been in use for about 30 years now. So it was in use for quite a while before Minifest started. And it was really nice to have some other people come in and add to the energy and partake of the energy. And now it's back to being just our coven's grove. But I think, I'm pretty sure that all through the Minifest days, this nice stone altar was in place. Good, sturdy altar. Not going anywhere. But of course, this being small and the fire pit down there being small, when we got up to that last year of 300 people, we had to find another place to have the main ritual. And that was the year that we did the cow pasture. Should we go now and have a look at the cow pasture, the site of the last main ritual mini-fest here? But isn't that a lovely space, that nice field out there? And the thing is, my neighbors are just farmers, have been here forever, and just regular folk. But I guess they, there's no secrets out in the country. They must know what was going on. And when, I guess it was the last year when there just wasn't any room to have the main ritual anywhere else, I phoned my neighbor here and said, "Can we use your cow pasture just for an afternoon? I have a bunch of people there," which is kind of an odd request. He said, "Sure, just make sure the gate or the fence is replaced properly afterwards so the cows don't get out, because every once in a while, not my doing, but in the nature of things, a cow would get loose and gallop up the wagon trail and through my garden and out onto the road or something." Well, I didn't want to be responsible for any of that. Anyway, we went out there, some of us, to prepare the field, which meant picking up as many cow patties as we could manage to find, and some thistles and things too. And we did a pretty good job, considering, but a few people, including you, Francis, apparently found a few cow patties that we hadn't. Anyway, we had the ritual out there, and Alex was, leading a dance or something, and of course, stepped right in one, slipped, and making the most of it, rolled around and had a good time, and a good shower afterwards, I presume. But that was fairly memorable, running around in the cow pasture. But another thing that, worried me a little bit, because earlier in the festival, I came down here to check things out, and I saw a couple of naked women walking across my neighbor's field, which, I hoped he wasn't around to see that, or maybe that was why he was fine about our all coming out and using it that afternoon. Maybe he was hiding in the trees somewhere. Who knows? But anyway, I thought that was very, very nice of him to let us use his field. Yeah, that was a good time.
But I would much
So, who
rather
do I have the pleasure of speaking
that
to?
than a doctor because we don't want
Michael
to
Moon.
get people to
And you're obviously a musician.
I still think that.
I am.
And what do you come to Fest for?
I come to Fest
And yeah, that child came out looking for food.
because
They're like, we gotta make sure he
there's so many reasons.
latches.
The main one, I guess, nature is my sacred space.
The booty.
To share that with people
Yes.
that also
Yes,
feel that way.
there those
To
that
be able
don't
to
like, well,
dance
and
with
we'll take
my
them out
bare
of
feet on the
walk,
earth,
breastfeed.
drums all night long,
It's
play the drums, to share songs,
Well, no,
to
but-
learn new things at the workshops, to share knowledge that
bonding
I have at my
and-
workshops.
you're perfect. I mean, Terrence was
And
born in December. That's his
Meet
final
people.
gathering.
Same thing we're all here for.
He was exposed
What spiritual path do you follow?
3 times when he was less than a month old.
I'd have to just say my heart, my own path.
And he had
It's,
he got the immunity through my milk. And
I
so
find my
basically it
spiritual
saved him from a
connection in nature and working with
And
the elements.
And then when we found out they usually only breastfeed every third.
So that
which is medical for
that's
me.
sort of a foundation for me.
And a little bit of protein.
But I
had
also
already been on the pump
practice
and
yoga
stuff,
and
so I had lots.
the Eastern mystical
And I
path.
just save his nighttime feeding as
And I
as
study
breast milk as
Western
well, so that when
Wisdom
he's
School
fucked,
type
he can up
teachings as
and
well.
Go back to sleep.
So
Yeah, everybody was
shamanism is a big thing that I've studied.
okay, other people.
So it all mixes together and find my
And we
own
fall asleep
my
like
own
that.
way with it all. If I took all my spiritual practices
But
together,
my,
the only place on earth I could actually practice them publicly would be here.
Would argue it's so much easier to keep them on phone.
So, can you grace us with some music?
Sure.
Breastfeeding every
Yeah,
third and anything else. And he will,
well, this is a
he needs
festival theme of fairies, so let's do a fairy song. Child of the moon, queen of darkness, kissing my sickness, laying me down. Child of the stars, dancing in the candlelight, sleep in my dreams tonight, rock me around. Child of the land, queen of the forest, dance me the morning mist crossing the shore. Child of the steam, rivers and valleys, oceans of mysteries float past your door. Take me back, take me to Derry, part of this and leave me home. Follow the evening star through to your secret door under the stone. Lady of of the night, spinning the planets, mystic enchantress, casting a spell. Lady of the Grail, keeper of mysteries, unsung harmonies, piercing the veil.
I didn't realize it was that. Oh, no, yeah, those ones you can, sweetheart.
Thank you very much.
There's
That was
a
beautiful. Who do I have the pleasure of speaking to?
My name is Fraser Sinclair.
Do you have a craft name?
Yes, it's Aman Ahotep.
And where do you hail from?
Toronto now. I lived in Ottawa for about 30 years and decided to make a big move to Toronto. It was something that I've always wanted to do, and when I turned 50, it was something I had to do.
So, is this your first time at Kaleidoscope?
No, I'm one of the old timers. I've been coming for about 15 years now. I've been in charge of registration now for 9.
And what do you come to Fest for? Is the rituals, workshops? Well, it's obviously not vacation in your case because you're working all the time.
I'm working all the time, but I think the biggest thing for me is the spiritual rejuvenation. It's a chance for all pagans to get together of all walks, all paths, and celebrate that energy and have that safe place to just worship. Be it communing one-on-one with people that I don't see for a year, be it taking part in rituals, be it taking part in workshops. What it is, it's a celebration of our uniqueness, celebration of our path. I need it in order that I can get from one year to the next.
And what is your spiritual path?
Currently, right now, I'm following the Kemetic path for the past 2 years, which is an ancient Egyptian path.
So you have the title Queen of Frivolity.
Queen of Frivolity,
Could
yes.
you elaborate on that?
That's kind of evolved. First of all, I'm gay, and what I wanted to be able to do, this is an opportunity for people to learn in a really safe place. So what I've done is I've taken all of the gay stereotypes, rolled them into one big personality, and I walk around with the mantra, so, you think you're not homophobic. The one nice thing that's come from it, though, is that there's a friendship from a homophobic male who's been coming here for years. And I would constantly tease him. Fraser's known for harassing the heteros. And he sent me an email and said, you know, he said, I just realized this year that any other gay man who flirts with me, the first thing I want to do is deck them. But he said, with you, it's different. I know it's of fun. I know it's of love. I know it's of respect. I've broken a wall so that now he's got a gauge for the next gay man who might flirt with him. So he's got a Fraser gauge. So as far as I'm concerned, it's answered prayer. The gods are using me. I'm a vessel, and that's where I go with them.
Hi, who do I have the pleasure of speaking to today?
Today you're talking to Tyler Mulligan, this year's champion Stag King, and so-called Mr. 2000.
Why Mr. 2000?
They're calling me Mr. 2000 because for charity, for Earth Angels charity, I raised $2,000 at auction for well, originally it was supposed to be for a wet sarong hoochie coochie dance, but it turned into pretty well turning me into public property.
So apparently your second most expensive item sold at auction here.
No, actually what it was is the auctioneer's career. In his entire career, I was the second highest bid he's ever gotten.
Wow.
And, the only thing that outbid me was a sterling silver dinner platter, or a sterling silver dinner set.
So is this your first time at Fest?
This is not my first time at Fest. This particular festival, Kaleidoscope, I've been going to for at least 4 years. Every year I've competed in the Stag King, and this year I managed to come out on top.
So is there like a selection process, like Miss whatever, Miss America? How does that work?
Well, we all go through different trials together as brothers. We fight through them all together. And there'll be different challenges which test different attributes, varying from strength to agility to wisdom, and all sorts of other surprises. And in the end, one man comes out just a little bit higher than everybody else.
How have you enjoyed your duties so far?
Well, as you might hear around here, it's good to be the king. It has its slight disadvantages, but it's all in good fun.
So in general, what do you come to Fest for? Is it rituals, workshops, vacation?
I have a creative way of thinking about why I come to Fest. A lot of people might not see from my angle, but the way I've always thought of it is, on my vacation I come here because we're all pretty well alchemists in the end, because when we come here, we take all the lead, all the heavy stuff that burdens us throughout the year, and we shed it into the fire and it comes back to us as gold.
And what spiritual path do you follow?
I don't really follow a specific spiritual path. I just sort of beat to my own drum, and whatever comes out, comes out.
Who do I have the pleasure of speaking to today?
Oh, my name is Douglas Thew. In amongst the community, kind of famously or infamously known as the Ferryman.
We'll get to that later. And where do you hail from?
I'm from Ottawa.
Is this your first time at Kaleidoscope?
No. I've been coming to Kaleidoscope now for, well, I missed the first one back when it was on Gina's property, and then moved on from Gina's land onto Bob's land and that. So this is the 19th one, so I've been to 18.
And what do you come to Fest for? Rituals, workshops, vacations?
All of the above and a lot more. The sense of community, you know, I mean, these people are my my family, and we're all spread out, all across, well, some of them even far down in the States, across Ontario, some of them in the western provinces. And this is the one time of year where we can kind of gather together as friends and family and just enjoy each other's company. So there are the workshops, which are nice, and I go to some of them, and the rituals, and it's a great way for me to detoxify from just living in the city. But I think above all of that, it's just being together with a sense of community.
And what spiritual path do you follow?
I'm a Celtic pagan, Druidic. To be specific, within the Celtic faith, my role is as a bardic, is in the bardic path, or as a bard, a storyteller, poet.
And who would you be?
Hi, I'm Pamela Fletcher, and I am the current organizer of the Kaleidoscope Gathering.
Wonderful. And where do you hail from?
I'm from Halliburton, Ontario, and I'm originally from the Ottawa area.
What is your spiritual path?
I am an eclectic pagan. I've been practicing now for, I would say, about 22 years, publicly-ish, around a little bit less than that, but I came into paganism as an opportunity to expand on some interests I had in the occult, and found an opportunity to be involved with the community, and felt like everyone else that I've come home. So it was an opportunity for me to spend time with people who shared similar interests, and got to know the gods and my own spiritual way. And as an eclectic, I have an opportunity to follow a path that is right for me. So if something works, I use it. If it doesn't work, I don't use it. And I live in the country, and I'm very connected to nature, so it's an opportunity to incorporate everything into my day-to-day life.
Great. As you mentioned, you are the organizer of this event. Tell me a little bit about that.
Well, I am Lady Pamela, Queen of the Universe, for 6 days only, and it is an opportunity for me to be able to give something back to a community, a family that I feel very connected to. And it's a place that is, I hope, just an opportunity for people to come together, even if it's once a year, that they haven't seen people for a year. So it's a place to come and share stories, find new paths, find new friends, life partners. Babies have been conceived here. People have been married here. They work through issues. They have a good time. They celebrate. So it's a wonderful place for all of that. And I started, this is our 19th year, and the festival has been, let me see, it started on Gina Ellis's land as an opportunity for her to provide a place for people to come from the Ottawa area. And it started off very small. The first year I think there was only 30 people. I couldn't even make it the first year. And then I started coming as a participant for a couple years, and we thought maybe it would be kind of fun to start organizing a few workshops. We had a ritual in the Bardic Circle, which I must say that I used to perform Little Rabbit Foo-Foo, and I performed it again last night for the first time in probably 10 years, which was lots of fun. And it just kind of grew over time, slowly. More people got involved as we got more workshops organized. And it grew a little too large for Gina's land. And we moved it from Gina's land at that point to another place in Lanark County, which we affectionately called Bob's Land, because it was run by a gentleman by the name of Bob. And we had the festival there for, this is where it gets vague, 5 or 6 years, maybe 5 years, 4 or 5 years, yeah. And we again kind of outgrew that space for various reasons. And we started looking for a new home, and we found this lovely spot in Whispering Pines with Eileen and Rolf, who are delightful people. And the festival's just kind of grown to well, proportions that, you know, it's an ever large community, and people come from all over now to join us because they feel they're coming home, coming part of the family. We have people coming from all over Eastern Ontario, or Eastern Quebec, Western Ontario, Eastern Ontario. We have people who come from the States. We have a crazy crew of people that come from Alberta every year just for the festivals. That's lots of fun. And it's run by, the festival is actually, I have a tremendous staff of people who are completely committed, or should be, that put their heart and soul into this festival. They love it. They love the community. They love giving people a place to come and celebrate. So that's what Kaleidoscope has become. How did Kaleidoscope get its name is an interesting
I
story.
don't know that.
Well, it used to be called Minifest way back when, because it stemmed out of Wiccan Fast, and it was a small version of Wiccan Fast. And we, as a group, one day were in Gina's magical kitchen that somehow seemed to house up to 50 people. Maybe not that many, but it seemed like it. And we were all sitting around one day being very silly, and we were asked to do a ritual at Blue Skies. And we got together and we thought, oh, we need a name. So we decided to call ourselves Kaleidoscope. So it was a kaleidoscope. And it just kind of stuck, and that's how the festival got its name.
Who do I have the pleasure of speaking to?
My name is Richard. I'm also known as White Raven.
And where are you from?
Ottawa, Ontario, Canada, planet Earth, North America.
The Milky Way, universe.
Universe.
Is this your first time at Kaleidoscope?
Hell no. I'm coming to Kaleidoscope for 15 years now.
And what do you come? What's your reason for coming? Is it rituals, workshops, just vacation, combination stuff?
Mostly vacation time, networking with people, and just sharing my experience with people openly.
So what is your spiritual path?
I'm an eclectic metaphysician, and as some people have explained what paganism is as an umbrella with many spokes to it, metaphysics is, paganism is one of the spokes of metaphysics. So basically it's multi-level and basically everything that has to do with one.
So, who do I have the pleasure of speaking to today?
I'm Jeremy.
Jeremy? And where are you from?
I live about 5 minutes from here.
Is this your first time at Kaleidoscope?
No, it's my 6th.
Sixth time, eh? And what do you come to Fest for?
Mostly to meet new people and to try new things.
And what spiritual path do you follow?
I follow the Greek path.
Why are you called the ferryman?
And hey, wait, we're alone, so nobody's running away. This is a beautiful thing. I will tell you the tale in a moment. This is actually the first time the story's actually been recorded down in any form, pen, paper, film, audio. I've always kept it as an oral tradition. It's an oath that was placed upon me. Some people call it a geas or a taboo. And it is a true tale, the way most and many myths and legends and fairy tales start are all based. It happened at a festival, or a gathering of the clans or families, if you will, much like this, many, many years ago. I had not found my path yet. I was still searching for who I was. And it happened in a distant land, similar to this place, and it encircled the lake very similar to this does. But the lake was a mystical, magical lake. It was cursed and blessed at the same time. You see, it was cold spring fed from 3 different sources. The local inhabitants around the area referred to it as Lake Shrinky-Dink. You see, women who would enter this lake were known to come out looking 10 years younger, whereas men who were known to enter this lake would be cursed instead of blessed and come out looking much, much older. Now, I come from a long line of boatmen. I have sea captains on both sides of my family who are in charge of great, great tall ships. So I come by this by blood, I guess, naturally. And in such was in my blood that each morning, to find solace in meditation, I would take my small craft out into the lake with a morning cup of coffee and a morning paper, just as the sun was rising slowly on the horizon, the village still asleep, and I would find my peace and solace. Well, on one such morning, as I was doing this, my coffee, my paper, 3 days old, but I hadn't read it yet, in my small craft, in the reeds, the village asleep, the sun along the horizon, and everything was peaceful. When I was interrupted by a small rustling in the brush off to my left. Peering through the reeds, I saw the blacksmith's daughter step down into the beach. Now, everyone knew the blacksmith's daughter was one of the most beautiful women in the village, a winsome lass who's well blessed from her parents. And many men had eyes upon her, for she was such a fair maid. And I watched as she slowly walked down onto the beach, looked at the island that lay in the center of the lake, looked around, and seeing no one else around, she removed every piece of clothing that she had on, slipped into the water, and swam out to the island, enjoying the blessings of the water and then the bright morning rays as they were soon to rise. Well, I am not a fool. I put down my paper, for I had something much better to read and watch now. Coffee in hand, and I gazed upon the island. It was a glorious morning now, when all of a sudden I heard another rustle up in the brush. Who dares interrupt my morning peace? Looking through the reeds again, I noticed the blacksmith's apprentice step down into the beach. A mountain of a man is he. I barely reach his collarbone. He is the width of me and a half as wide again. His arms built like my thighs, his thighs like tree trunks. Fearsome, fearsome young man was he. Now, it was well rumored amongst the village that the blacksmith's daughter and the blacksmith's apprentice had eyes for one another. But as any young man knew, there were three things you never ever touched: the blacksmith's favorite hammer, the blacksmith's favorite anvil, but most importantly of all, the blacksmith's daughter. And the blacksmith's apprentice knew this, of course, better than anyone. So he too strode down upon the beach, gazed out upon the island, and saw his lady fair lying just in the rising dawn. Looking around, sensing the village still asleep, he too removed every piece of clothing he had on. And my jaw hit the bottom of my craft as I realized that he was going to attempt to brave the cursed waters of the lake. Oh, what a brave, brave fool was he, as I watched him walk out into the lake, step by step, by step, by step, by step, by step. Now, to his credit and his bravery and the stoutness of his heart, he had traveled farther out into that lake than any man I have ever seen since that day and before. I mean, he was out at least up to his ankles before he realized that the water of Lake Shrinkydink had held him fast and he could go no further. Now, I've always been an enterprising young lad at the time. I had no snow on the roof at the time, but I still had my wits about me. So I slowly paddled my craft quietly up towards him and reached up and tapped him on the knee, for I was down low and he is a tall man. And I bade him to bend down low, and I whispered to him, "Apprentice, you seem to have a small problem. I sense your lady love is over there, and you are here, and there's a long stretch of cursed water in between you. For a small price, since I have a craft, I will take you from here to there." And he paused for a moment, and I scratched my head wondering what could be his delay. "It is simple. She is here. You are there. I have a boat. What is the problem?" "Well, you see, ferryman, this is the first time he called me this. You see, ferryman, I am not wearing any pants. Thus I have no pockets, and thus I have no 2 pennies to pay your fare. The insult. He had obviously mistaken me for one of my distant Greek ancestors. Charon, who, while the most skillful boatsman ever, taking lost souls from one side of the river Styx to the other, was fiscally irresponsible and did not know the value of his service. No. I will remember this. Apprentice, come down here again. And he bent down low, and I said, no. It will cost you something dearer. You see, there is this competition of storytellers and poets and bards and dancers and drummers this evening. I've never been to such a thing, but I hear listening to it and watching it is very, very thirsty work. And I am running out of ale. So if you will oath me one of your ales for this evening's, repast, I will take you across to the island. And he looked at me again and he thought, well, you see, ferryman, I only have 1 ale left back in my camp, still in the ice, and it is a Creemore Springs ale. Now, that is when I made my mistake. You see, I was suckled, if you will, weaned on this brew. I had grown up just a stone's throw away from where I was crafted, and the memories and the tastes of my youth came flooding back. And maybe it was the twinkle in my eye or the little bit of drool down my chin, but he realized at this point in time he still had power over me. So he smiled and he said, ferryman, again he calls me this, if you oath me to take me across to the island with not a single drop of water touching my skin from the blade of your oars, I will oath you my last Creemore Springs ale. For I know now the power of this cursed water. Again, an insult. Now, not only has he sat there and insulted my sense of wits and my knowledge of and the value of my services, but he's now insulted my ability with an oar and how skillful I could use it. I will remember this. But I did not say anything. Instead, I smiled at him and bent him to come down low to me again, and I said, apprentice, I will do you one better. If you oath me your last ale, still packed in ice, cold, frozen almost, I will take you from where you are now to your lady love, with not a single drop of water touching your skin from the blade of my oar or for anything else. And additionally, I will make sure that my movements of my paddle, my oar, are so silent and swift, so gentle upon the lake, that not a single ripple will be made as to make a sound to rouse your lady love, so that you may come upon her sleep. Now what young man could not refuse such a thing? Immediately he held out his hand and he shook and bargained. And on my word, I helped him into my craft. I took him to the island with not a single drop of water touching his skin. My blade, my oar, so silent and swift and sure that there was not a ripple upon the lake. And when we got there, his lady love was still sleeping, and I even in my generosity helped him out of the craft. And I bade him bed down low again, tapping him on the knee, and I said, apprentice, have we bargained well and done? Have we made our pact? And he smiled at me and he said yes, and we shook. So I started to paddle away, but as I did, I remembered the insults. I would have my revenge. So at about 9 or 10 boat lengths away from the island, I looked up at him. And then I looked over at the island and smiled and gently stood in my craft, rocking slightly but keeping my balance. And I put 2 fingers to my lips and I whistled, sharply but softly. Not enough to rouse the village, but just enough to rouse the blacksmith's daughter. And she stood up shocked, looked around and saw me standing in my craft, and I waved, hello. And she looked at me, an eyebrow raised, and I pointed. And she looked over at the blacksmith's apprentice and back at me, and I waved again, goodbye. And then she smiled, as only a blacksmith's daughter can smile, stood up, dove back into the water, and headed for shore. Now, you can see where this is leading. The blacksmith's apprentice is going, "Please, come here, please, ferryman, she's getting away." No, no, apprentice. You already know the value of my fare and what it'll cost to take you across a stretch of water. And you've already admitted to me that you have 1 ale left in your camp. And you have already oathed that to me, it is mine already. You have nothing left for which to pay me. The moral of this, apprentice, as I sailed off, is the next time you pay a fare from this ferryman, pay your return fare as well in advance. Now the tale does not end there. If only it would. But that night, around the bardic fire, I had finished my ales and was very, very thirsty, as I had learned and as I had thought, from watching and listening to the performance. And after a few performers, one had finished, and this great voice hove into view. "I must be allowed to speak," came from the darkness on the other side of the great fire. "I must be allowed to speak now." And the crowd parted, and out stepped the man. I barely came up to his collarbone. He was 1.5 feet wide. His arms like my thighs, his thighs like tree trunks. It was the blacksmith's apprentice coming forward towards the fire, towards the host of the competition. "Let me speak." Who would refuse a man of such stature? He acquiesced. "I have come here to pay a debt to the ferryman, my oath." Now he is calling me this name in front of others. And he started to walk slowly towards me. At his side, I could see now a leather pouch dripping in water as the ice was melting from the heat of the fire. "I have come here to pay the ferryman my last ale." And the crowd went silent. Who is this ferryman? What is going on? And what on earth could part such a large, tall, thirsty man from his last ale still in the ice? And he pulled it out as he stood in front of me. The condensation still dripping off of it, all wet, the melted ice. And that is where I made my second mistake. For you see, maybe it was the twinkle in my eye or the little bit of drool down my chin. But he realized at that moment, through all that we had done, all that I had put him through, that he still had that power over me. I reached out to grab it, and just as my fingertips graced the bottle, he pulled it back and smiled. And he said, "Ferryman, I have oathed this last bottle to you. It is yours. Here, you may have it. But before I give it to you, would you please oath me one small favor? It is just a small one." I was so thirsty, my voice harsh. Anything, what is it? Just tell me what the favor is, please. "Well, there are those who do not know why I am calling you the ferryman," as he outstretched his arms to the village. "If they ask you, would you please stand up and tell them?" If they ask. But I am thirsty." And as he handed me the bottle, the sound, the chant started coming up around the village. The ferryman, the ferryman, the ferryman, the ferryman, the ferryman, getting louder and louder, building and building. This wave just rolling into the shore. How could I refuse now? So grasping the bottle, I started going around the fire, telling the people of the story of the blacksmith's daughter and the apprentice and what had transpired later that day that left him stranded on the island. When I was done, I sat back down, and he was still standing there. And I looked up and I said, "So, apprentice, you and I, we are done now, our oaths fulfilled. And he looked at me and he smiled again cruelly and he said, no, you and I are done. Our oaths are fulfilled. But you and they are not finished. For you gave me your word that because they did not know, if they asked why I call you the ferryman, you would speak up and tell them so. I only suggested this was a good evening to start. So because of that, for the price of one ale, I am now oathed, obligated, taboo ageus, placed upon me, that should anyone who not know the story as to why I am called the ferryman, I must tell them the tale. And there are times when those of the village are around and someone, an outsider or someone who has not heard the story before, comes up and asks me the question. They run. Oh, please, no, go away. I've heard this 10 times, a dozen times, a score, 100 times before. And I laugh at them. For every time that they have heard the tale, I have had to tell this over and over again 100 more times. And before I am laid low in the ground, I will have to tell it 1,000 more times. But it is not all bad. Every storm has an eye, a calm. Every cloud a silver lining. And so does this tale too. For that was the first bardic competition, a gathering of the storytellers that I had ever witnessed. And inadvertently, it is the first one that I had ever entered. And it was the first one that I had ever won. And it set me on my path, amongst the bardic path, amongst the storytellers. And as time grew on, my stories grew, and my knowledge has grown, and my wisdom has grown, and I have become one with my bardic brothers. And even above all of that, and if none of that had ever have happened, the blacksmith's daughter and the blacksmith's apprentice are still together and happily wed. And for that reason and that reason alone, as much as this is a curse upon me, I will tell the tale with a smile on my lips from now until when I am laid low on the ground. And that is the story of the blacksmith's daughter, the apprentice, and why I am called the ferryman.
Funny stories or anecdotes?
Any story at all, actually.
I'm going to have to think about that one.
I think it's
I'm not much of a storyteller.
Any specific things that may have been a good story? I haven't been here long enough to be able to say so, but I expect on having a few ideas tonight.
Yes, but I'm bound by secret.
The old going joke is there's two types of stories I have. There's those that I'm paid to tell, and those that I'm paid not to tell.
Well, there was a past fest a number of years back where we had tornado warnings coming through, and lots and lots of rain. Had to get everybody out of their tents and into vehicles or into shelter.
No, this
and
is actually
one of my
Fraser's.
students was camped with me. She set herself up near the front gate, welcoming people who were arriving late and who were wet and cold, and she was giving away all her clothing out of her suitcase because it was dry, and reached the point where she had no clothing left. So we joked with her that it was a good thing that Fest was clothing optional, otherwise she'd have been in a lot of trouble because she'd given away everything that she owned that was dry to wear in order to clothe others who were arriving soaking wet. So that was a bit of fun.
Well, let me see. We have done a lot of fun and crazy things. We theme every year. Some of my favorite memories, let me see. Working backwards today, this year we had a special event called Siren Swim, and it was an opportunity for us to break all the rules and go swimming at night. We had tiki torches and lights floating in the pond, and we all went swimming. but I looked up at one point and I looked across the lake, and there was a couple women, sky-clad, leaning over, fire in the lake, the floating candles, and it was just like out of Midsummer's Night Dream. It was beautiful. One of my favorite memories as well is when my husband Carpenter built a long ship for the year of the Vikings, and it was like a deck. It was a full long ship. And on the sail of it, we played the 13th Warrior, and we sat on the beach watching the 13th Warrior on the sail of a Viking ship, drinking mead when he said, "Honey!" It was great fun. It was for me, anyways.
Well, my dad one time was driving in his car, and a white old lady appeared. She was dressed in all white, appeared right in front of the truck. He hit her, going about 80 kilometers per hour, and so he stopped, and he saw the lady in his rear running as fast as he could. So I could say that was a funny story.
Many years ago, I participated in the Bardic Festival, and a persona got created for me called Bubba, good southern redneck boy. And this year we held our first annual Redneck Games at Kaleidoscope, which was a lot of fun. We had a really good time doing it. And then we proceeded to do the Bardic with the rest of the rednecks that have joined me. And yesterday we helped raise over $2,000 for our charity this year, which was a lot of fun.
Too many funny stories. I think what ends up happening, one of the funniest things is the staff can go crazy because we're like hosts. These are all our guests, so everything that we do has to be behind the background. And we usually end up doing a lot of jokes on each other. Last year it was funny. Pam thought that she would get me because she knows I hate the plastic pink flamingos. So they were conspiring to flamingo my campsite. I got wind of it and I made a pink flamingo coat and surprised Pam with it. And in order to get her back, what I did was all of the people who came in through the front door, I said, Pam's not feeling really well. She could do with the hug. And after Fest was over with, and we were sitting there in the after party, Pam goes, geez, I got an awful lot of hugs this time. And I said, oh, more than usual? And she said, you didn't. I said, yes, I did. So Pam chased me around the campsite and slapped me silly. That's what we're like. It's the only way that we can stay sane throughout this whole process.
Song about Fest. Know the earth beneath your feet. Feel the rhythm, drive the beat of the drums. Comb the circle and build a fire. Let the sounds take you higher. Dance in the fire. Heal the pagan heart. I feel the earth and stars. Lord, I'd be part of this universe. Heal your heart, heal the healer's heart. Calling the spirits in the name of love to heal the planet as we drum and dance. The ancient names sung in time, weaving magic. We are lying in the trance. Step into the dance. Heal the pagan heart. I feel the earth and stars. Lord, creatures in the wheel of life we serve.